Team B.
Team B.
All right. One Tim, one Frank.
One Raphael.
And one Raphael. All right, welcome to another episode of Drinks with MakerDAO Delegates. Yeah. Another great episode of Drinks with MakerDAO Delegates. Today we have a special guest, Tim Black of Feedback Loops LLC. How are you, Tim?
Hello, everybody. Hello, everybody. Hello, everybody. FBL for short, thanks to Frank. Although if Endgame goes through, then I'm going to have to rebrand again, which is, you know, whatever. See how that goes.
And of course, I'm joined today by my co-host, Raphael. Raphael, what's going on, brother?
Hey, greetings from Germany. I was actually at the Oktoberfest this weekend, and to fulfill my civic duties as a Bavarian, drinking beer in liter jugs, I went in the AM, which means less people, but you also get a seat on the table, which is great. So that was fun.
Wow, that's
awesome.
actually on my bucket list, man. So I have to go meet you out there next October.
Hey, come.
Yeah.
We actually proposed we should get a table for Maker Delegates, and I think that's an amazing.
That'd be awesome.
Sweet.
Or any
Oktoberfest DAO.
Yeah, exactly. Or anybody from
DAO,
the
MakerDAO, DrinkDAO. No, oh, sorry.
Drink that.
Yeah, why not?
That would be awesome. You got to share some pictures of your outfit, Raphael, so we could, you know, make it public here.
Okay, if you insist, sir.
Yeah, leader Hosen memes number go up.
That's what's up. All right, so what's going on, guys? This is the episode featuring Tim Black of Feedback Loops, as I mentioned earlier. It's Wednesday, October 5th. We are kicking off today, I think, MIP 65 with the executive vote. So that's some exciting things happening there. We also have the proposed endgame plan coming soon to a theater near you. So that's exciting as well. But there's something that you guys released in the last 24 hours, which got me excited. And I actually need to get involved in the little contest you guys have going there. And it's part of the JokeDAO. Can you guys get into it and kind of, for those that don't know, and actually I probably might need a little help on this too. I haven't been keeping up as much as I should. What exactly is JokeDAO and what exactly are you guys doing with JokeDAO?
Actually, I mean, I think my initial thing was that in a couple of calls, I had the impression that actually nobody really knows what should happen next. Like there's no clear sense of what the priorities in the DAOs are. And then everybody's just working, like, you know, putting one foot in front of the other, but it's like you're walking in a blizzard, you know, and there's, you know, storm all around you and snow all around you, and you kind of lost track, right, of where you're going. So I wanted to create a tool where people can submit their priorities and other people vote on that, and then it becomes clear what's like number one in the DAO, or at least among delegates and columns. And I started with a Google sheet, and that was actually okay-ish. We had some participation, not that much. And then Tim showed me JokeDAO, and that happened. Like there was this string of JokeDAO sheets. Like one guy I know in Flipside who founded Metrics DAO, he was like, Raph, JokeDAO is the shit. It totally, you know, exploded my understanding of what crypto can do, and this is the future, and blah, blah, blah. And then Tim was coming on and was like, hey, JokeDAO is the shit. We need to try that for the Prio tool. Luca Prosperi was pitching in saying, yeah, I know David, he's a great guy. David Phelps, who's the CEO of, or like the founder of JokeDAO. And then Tim was already talking to David, right? Is that right?
Yeah, it was just good timing, I think. Yeah, I forgot exactly how I found, I remember how I found JokeDAO. It was like when I was at Rabbit Hole, David started doing the first Joker contests, which were sort of this organic thing on Twitter where you tell a joke, and then they had some well-known crypto people who were like curating them and picking them and then just like minting them as an NFT and then selling it, right? So there's like an actual treasury and an actual DAO behind each thing, right? It's like nouns, but funny. So that's kind of awesome. I was actually thinking the other day, it'd be super funny to fork JokeDAO for makers random posts and vote on stuff and then be like nouns, but boring, but we could get into that later. But anyway, like JokeDAO is awesome because it does two things that I really liked. Number one, it points out that tokens can be useful and also useless. And two, it like actually is this sneaky grounds up governance tool, which is why I was talking to David over great length, because, you know, shit posting and then actual work, which is cool. So I think that was just sort of a confluence of things coming together timing wise on your end, Raph, and et cetera. But, you know, David has always been talking about JokeDAO being more useful. And the coolest thing about it is that there is a submission and a voting period, and submissions are open, right? And then voting can be controlled however you want, which is just this really flexible way to actually approach anything. You get a meme contest, they have like all this rich formatting into it. So there's a lot of optionality for it. And the reason I was looking towards it for Maker specifically is because our processes are, you know, I wouldn't say stale, they work, but we kind of need to shake things up a little bit. And so it seemed like an interesting platform to use in a way that, in a much different ways. You know, I think David, because he knows Luca from investing or some other circle, was talking about, it would have been amazing if we were able to basically fork Luca's proposal back in June and we had that whole love drama and, you know, just propose it in a different way, right? That's what you would have done in a submission window. You would have just like taken everything, copy pasted it, and been like, team gets this much, or maybe like 6-month vision, why, you know? And so you can actually tinker on the whole thing, and then it would go to voting, and there's those mechanics as well. So JokeDAO is just continuously releasing interesting governance features. They have up voting. They also have down voting. You can change how down voting rewards people. You can pick which thing wins. Like you could do the third most popular proposal, or you could do, you know, everyone who downvotes gets no rewards. There's lots of interesting little games that you can play, and it just seemed like an interesting platform to bring to Maker. And then, yeah, I think we've already shilled David enough, but it's been really fun to be a part of that community. All you have to do is put JokeDAO Maxi in your Twitter bio, and you can join their little Telegram group, which is like 100 people who are, you know, good senses of humor. And yeah,
cool.
It's a nice
I
little
haven't
thing.
done it yet. See, I have to get in on the Telegram thing.
Yeah, if you buy one of the NFTs from an actual joke race, the thing that JokeDAO does every week, then you can be on their council. That's where they manage the profits from selling the NFTs. Most of it goes to charity, if I recall correctly, which is also just another awesome thing, which is pretty interesting. So there's a lot of really interesting mechanics you can use from that. I guess interesting is the word of the day, but yeah, I don't know. My ideal hope is that we use JokeDAO as a platform and start to reinvent some of our governance processes from the ground up. I think MetaDAOs would obviously use this as one of their toolkits if they really want to. It's a really nice, you know, pickaxe to have in the toolkit, because again, it's grounds up, right? Anybody can look at a proposal, change one line, and then that new one could win, right? If they want to run it on a race or however they want to formulate the whole thing. So there's a lot of possibilities in like an open design space for making it interesting. Then there's also the whole other conversation about making governance entertainment, which is like, we can get into that whole line of thinking if we really want to. But yeah, so for Maker, I think it's really just this priority thing, right?
Yes.
We just want to try that.
This is like a really good segue in a way, because I think you've mentioned endgame, and you mentioned governance and gamification, and like, I mean, we've just seen that very few MKR holders actually vote, and okay, now they can delegate to people like us, which is cool. But in the end, like, I think making it as much fun and as exciting as possible to participate in governance also changes the kind of ideas that come up, because if governance is this super serious process where you have to submit these really well thought out ideas and not make mistakes, it just, you know, it's like an ecology for a certain kind of thought. And if you change that ecology, you'll get very different types of thinking and of proposals. And I think much more creativity. And I think that's basically what we want, because this is what keeps a community exciting and alive. And so I'm very pumped. I'm just going to shill one more. We're doing an experiment right now. If you hold one MKR or delegated more than one MKR, you have been airdropped tokens, MakerPulse, and you can participate in an actual JokeDAO contest. And Frank will put the link in the show notes, I think.
Sweet.
Yes, I'll definitely take care of that. What's the contest this week? If you can tell the viewers what exactly the contest is about and how I go about entering the contest.
Sure. So we focused on the end game plan. Tim has been, I think, one of the icebreakers in endgame plan to permissionlessly start a decentralized voter committee. We know that Rune started the DVC, where he basically explains the endgame plan, but we haven't seen any community efforts until Tim started his RFC DVC. And in the RFC DVC, people can actually just take the endgame plan apart and say like, hey, how can we implement that? What makes sense? Where are the issues? And then Tim is gracious enough to surface that back on the forums, and Rune has actually been extremely receptive of that, taking that up in his DVC calls and really answering these questions. So it's a great format. And we've now used JokeDAO and said, we're going to take the opposite approach, not what should be fixed or what needs fixing, but what's actually exciting, what's great about the endgame plan, what's strong about it. And so we asked the question, what's exciting, what's the most exciting part of the endgame plan to you? And people can submit that on the JokeDAO. And all you have to do is click on that link, switch your MetaMask or whatever wallet you use to Polygon with the address that you held the MKR on, and then you can participate. It's very simple. It's really just a 2-click process.
Slight nuance, actually. Anyone can submit. So whoever has the link, however we shill it, maybe we should actually talk to the Maker Growth folks to get them out there to talk about it as well. But that's the cool thing about JokeDAO is you can restrict if you want, but I think we didn't do that. I'm not sure. The voting is where the Maker Pulse thing comes in, but you can use tokens on either end. Like you could gate submissions with 10 Maker Pulse or something. Like the more you participate in every pulse check or something, the more votes you get later. You know, there's plenty of options, right? This is kind of the point of using tokens in the first place. Everyone goes after speculation, but like speculation is like the most boring use case. Like the more interesting thing is like encoding values into these things and seeing what happens with them, right? Which is why JokeDAO and a couple of other tools are really interesting these days. So as far as I understood, Raph can correct me if I'm wrong, but we didn't gate it, but we'll see. I don't know. Just go click on the link, try it out. If it didn't work, yell at us.
I'm not sure which buttons I clicked. Oh my God.
Yeah, it'll be fine. It doesn't matter. We've got the JokeDAO Council to help us out. We'll put proposals up on there, everything if we need their help, and they'll, you know, click buttons until it works. But it's meant to be an easy to use platform, which is cool. And it supports memes. What I really like about this prompt too is we were just going to do another joke, but this prompt is better because A, it's about being an optimistic, and B, like if you want to joke, you have to be like very sly about the whole thing, which is nice. I appreciate that. So we'll see. Hopefully we get some folks in there commenting. We'll find out what happens, but we should run for a few days.
I like the optimism part of it. That's something that's desperately needed, you know, with the end game coming up. Man. Yeah, very hard.
Yeah, it's really easy to be pessimistic. It's really hard to argue a negative. Maker governance in a nutshell.
Great way to put it.
Pretty much works out. Yeah, I've got a lot of those taglines, I'm sure.
All right, so speaking of being optimistic, I think it's time for a drink. This is Drinks with MakerDAO Delegates. What are we drinking this week? I know it's early where you're at, Tim. I know it's early here in Bogota, Colombia, getting ready for DevCon. And Raphael, you're on the other side of the world. I know it's pretty late, but Raphael, what are you drinking today?
I have something special, a weird drink. It's called a moon milk. And it's made with ashwagandha, which is some apparently Ayurvedic healing herb, cinnamon, and some plant milk. I used almond. And you just mix it, make it hot, and then you put some honey in it. And apparently it's super relaxing and helps you on your spiritual journey.
It's like ayahuasca.
That's amazing.
Basically.
Wow. Minus the whole galaxy vision you got going on.
All right. What about you, Tim? Well, I know it's early up in the East Coast of the United States. What do you got?
Yes, sir. Still working through my coffee this morning. I forget exactly where it's from, but our Airbnb was generous enough to keep it here. So rolling in on cup number 2, which is good. And yeah, enjoying that caffeine. If I was on the West Coast, I'd like make a nice single cup and then talk about tasting notes. But this is not particularly known for its quality, so I'm just appreciating the caffeine and the warmness because it's definitely like pretty chilly outside. So enjoying that.
All right. So since you already gave it a taste, why don't you give it a score from 1 to 5? And if you could describe it, that would be nice. But if, you know, it's just coffee, it's coffee, right? Like last week we had Matt Rabinowitz of Success Capital. He was drinking Costco off the shelf coffee and gave it 2 stars. So yeah, I can imagine it's probably wasn't good coffee, but
this is
I don't
about
know.
a half star above Costco. I think it's like some mass-produced East Coast brand, but not Folgers. It's a medium roast. It's got sort of like a deep, like over-roasted hazelnut flavor. You know, I visited Turkey once and hung out with my friend's grandmother and cracked hazelnuts on the porch. It smells like that. That's what it smells like. And I put oat milk in it. So it's also got this like aftertaste of like, you know, stomach acid and morning breakfast cereal, which is, sounds awful, but it's actually quite enjoyable. So I appreciate it. 2.5 stars, enthusiastic.
2.5. And I got some coffee too from Colombia. So this better be good, damn it. It's Juan Valdez. I'm sure you heard of Juan Valdez, right? Yeah, Juan Valdez is organic, you know, fancy pants stuff that you find at the supermarket out here called Carulla, which is, I would say it's the version of Whole Foods, but maybe not as Whole Foods type, you know, branding, because obviously they can't get every Whole Foods brand out here. But yeah, it's pretty nice store. So if you're in Bogota or Medellin or Cali, I think they have Carullas all over the country here. But yeah, Colombian coffee, right? This better be good. It's balanced, it's organic, and it's a special Juan Valdez. You remember Juan Valdez, Tim?
That's a throwback. I like seem to remember like Misty Mountain commercials talking about coffee narratives, explaining this person who's actually a brand who isn't actually a person. Is that correct? Does that bring back the right memories? Forget which company he was associated with. But yeah.
I think he's just a farmer from the mountains, and he became popular in the 1940s and 50s for, you know, being one of the face of Colombian coffee, especially in the United States.
Right.
Yeah. But this is really good. This is nice and toasty. Has a little bit of a bitter taste to it, but I would say, I mean, I'm not a coffee connoisseur, so I'll give it a 4. But I could be totally wrong, and it could be 2.5 as well. Who knows? But yeah,
coffee black or what?
No, with café con leche. So it has pasteurized milk, I believe. Yeah, I think it's pasteurized. But you could get unpasteurized milk out here, by the way, off the shelf, so which is pretty cool. Yeah. Hey, Raphael, what about you? We didn't even let you taste your magical potion there. Bless you.
So I think I put a little bit too much cinnamon in it, but otherwise it's quite good. I think the combination of milk, cinnamon, and honey is pretty neat. It's like childhood memories in a way, sweet, warm. I'd give it a 3.5. because the cinnamon is just a little bit too strong, right? I think if I would have dialed down the cinnamon a bit, then it could have been a 4, but 3.5.
And is that, do you drink that warm, or does that, it can be cold? Okay, warm. Okay, very cool.
Yeah, so, I mean, it's kind of chilly here too, so I prefer to drink it warm, but I think you can make it warm and then just let it cool, and or put some ice on it in the summer, but for now it's warm. Yeah,
for sure. And this is a special episode because we have no alcohol today. Thank goodness that Tim Schupner didn't show up. No, I'm joking, Tim.
I mean, I would have. There is a bottle of wine in that fridge. You know, if you wanted to get us started, that's great.
It's 11:30 in the East Coast, man. So you don't have excuses. All right, so let's go. This week, like I said, I think we're going to get the MIP 65. Tim Black, what are you excited about this week, or what are you excited about right now? As we're in the middle of the week, there's quite a few posts. The author of the Endgame Plan, Rune, has submitted a bunch of the MIPs that he authored into submission into the October cycle, governance cycle. So there's a lot of exciting stuff. We also have some big news about the first cluster, right? Is that right? Or is that the first MakerDAO announced by Sam McPherson of the protocol engineering team? So what are you most excited about this week?
That's a great question. I think MIP 65 is interesting. I was talking to GovAlpha on their call last week, and they went through some of the implementation details, which seemed to get us a little bit away from the trustware problem that we've got going on right now with real world assets. So I'm excited to see that thing finally get across the finish line. And then speaking more on real world assets, I'm sort of hoping to see a little bit more about Rune's plan for them in the current place we find ourselves. I think he mentioned sort of like a whole scale reboot of real world assets in general, or real world finance, which would be awesome. I guess I'll take this point to say I really would like us to get a little bit more innovative. It's been a year. So, you know, last year I posted something about how the money flows and flow charts is where it starts, but then eventually it just becomes more software native. I'd like to see a little bit more progress on that. So that's sort of where my viewpoint is. I'm a little worried about some of the folks who just decided to apply for focus on collateral while we're in the middle of the end game thing coming up for vote. So apologies to those folks in advance. I think I'm going to abstain on the velodrome thing, but I will defer to my counsel when I meet with them this afternoon or at some point. But I'm excited to see that thing go forward. No reason to really block where that's going. It's nice to be thinking about where is DAI actually being used? Where is its liquidity like important? Like what other protocols is it supporting? You know, we have to continue to do that or else we'll sort of fade away. So Godspeed to that team, I guess. What are some other things? Yeah, I think the RFC calls are cool. I've been trying to work on this presentation that summarized everything. And I'll be frank, I've been working on it for like a week and a half or 2 weeks, and it just is not singing and it's not useful. So I think the forum says everything that needed to be said. So I'm just going to let that presentation live in my Google Drive of things I never present to people. But now I have to figure out what to do with that other DVC call and how to make it useful. I think there's plenty of different ways to take that, but that's something else I'm excited about is open spaces for new governance thing. And then of course, JokeDAO. So that's a pretty good rundown. Things to be excited about.
And just to let the viewers know, the RFC request for comments is the request for endgame, how to cluster into the endgame, right? Is that correct? What's the best way to describe it to the folks?
Yeah, RFC is request for comments. It's a period in any MIP lifecycle where, you know, all comments are welcome and then the author can choose to incorporate them or not. This is actually part of the reason I thought we wanted to do JokeDAO in general. My hope was to sort of replace RFC with like some sort of minimum threshold of like actual votes and things that have been worked on before MIPs are accepted. You know, I think Hasu made this point a few months ago, which is that the heartbeat of Maker governance is way too fast, which leads us to make sort of suboptimal decisions, which I think is a charitable way of putting it. And so it'd be nice to revise those processes a little bit. You know, a month to review like 15 MIPs is like probably not enough. And so that's why I spun up those calls in the first place. It was also because Runa was like canceling them. So I was like, all right, no, people need to hang out. And so just leverage those product manager skills to get everybody into like a virtual environment to throw ideas out there. And so I think we accomplished that mission of giving Rune the feedback because we gave him more than he could ever use. And so he did incorporate a lot of it, which is like kind of awesome, especially the POV or protocol owned vault one specifically, just gained all these components and all these like edits and different pieces. I was like, oh, all right, it's working. But now I'm at a little bit of a loss of like what to do next, because it's basically a month while they're up for a vote. So how can we be useful as like a DVC? We're taking this week off and I'm trying to figure that out. So any and all suggestions are good.
Yeah, I have one. Like I think I kind of should that to you anyway, but like why don't we do a governance DVC? You know, where we kind of collect ideas, research, experiments about governance that and just, you know, basically produce governance templates that MakerDAOs can then use and incorporate. And we can say, hey, we tried this works that way, this does that way. Oh, you want to token gate, here's some best practices. Oh, you want to issue soul-bound tokens. Hey, look at that. You want to think about community 3 years down. Hey, look at these articles we've written or that we've collected, and, you know, just produce knowledge about governance.
Yeah, so specifically tooling, or more specifically, like if you want to solve problem X, here are some options.
Yeah, that.
The latter.
Yeah, kind of consulting. I think tooling, I don't know, I'm not a software developer, and I think there's plenty of great tools out there. Sorry. So I think just research and knowledge, basically, insights.
That could be cool. We could also host clustering teams too, and just talk to them about what their process has been and figure out how to standardize it. You know, there's like this whole open design space, right? Like the biggest criticism of Endgame has been that like the implementation plan is lacking. You know, to steelman that though, it's like that's everyone's job, is to implement it if maker holders should choose it, right? You know, so
I think Wouter is doing a bunch of work there. Like
yeah, we had a lot of discussions about that. I also, one of the other things I've been working on tinkering in the background was this idea of getting that feedback loop between maker holders and then the people doing the work. What would be core units, could be MetaDAOs in the future, and putting some sort of structure in the middle of it. Mostly just by structure, I mean a set of meetings that happens every 2 weeks with a set of participants, right? They don't have to necessarily be paid. It'd be nice if they were. But the idea would be that, you know, we had all this work done by strategic finance to say like, okay, these are our goals. This is our spend, right? So then the next logical step is, where does the spend go, right? It's like allocating it. You know, think about it like a capital allocator. You're going to allocate this capital and attention towards these different goals, right? That needs to have like a set of people working on it. You know, Wouter and his team worked on the other end, which is like, we're doing the work and we want this to be these things and it's milestones and et cetera, which is a much better framing, because it's this idea that you would be producing value, which is important. But yeah, there needs to definitely be this like link in the middle, which is especially good for delegates as well. So hopefully we'll have some more on that. That was one of the other ideas, is kind of working some more on the project-based budgeting, I think is what it calls, PBE or whatever. Getting that going and putting that in that context, which should be interesting. Because yeah, I feel like for a lot of people in core units, from what I've heard and also just one-on-one talk to people or in open calls, they feel a little bit like hands tied, sort of caught between two worlds. I've called it a quantum state before. Like, oh, if it passes or whatever. It's been that way for like a month and a half. So I guess we'll continue that and then have a little bit more of a result towards the end of the month. I'm hoping to see a little bit more participation in the end game votes than normal, but we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be interesting to see how this all works out, especially with the budgeting and, you know, once MetaDAOs get clustered, and see what kind of targets each MetaDAO will have, and how they will use, you know, their budgeting to kind of build the tooling that they need, right? Such as, you know, if they need a front end build and all that stuff. So it's just so much there that needs to be answered and stuff. Um, but switching gears, you also mentioned the Velo vote, which is an optimistic platform, an AMM, right? An automated market maker on optimism. And the backstory is that it was airdropped to the Maker Governance, and it's an NFT, right?
It's a pause proxy, right? They just dropped it to the pause proxy.
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, let me see if I can share my screen so I could show the vote, how it's going. Here it is. So eventually what had to happen was, in order to control this NFT that's in the proxy, it needs to be a multi-sig. Unfortunately, that's the only way to manage this damn thing. And, you know, there's a few community members who volunteer to be part of these multi-sig. And as you can see right now, it's getting approved. What are your thoughts on this? You know, I'm not sure if you voted, or you did vote, right? Correct? Or not yet?
Nope, not yet. I was going to get this meeting done and then pop my votes in. There's only 2 this week, so it didn't require too much diligence, which is chill. Yeah. My thoughts are, I mean, you know, approving a multi-sig is like a pretty benign thing, but it does make sense. You know, I think what we originally approved in Maker Governance was a little bit more decentralized in its management, but you know, when you're managing things in a decentralized context, it just starts to pile up. And I think that's why they chose to go back to the multi-sig, which was not their preferred implementation. It seems to be a diverse team that's like passionate about doing it. I mean, it's not particularly a hugely impactful vote, but you know, Velodrome does use like terminology that could be construed as problematic, you know, things like bribes, et cetera, which Curve also does. But that to me just seems like, you know, honesty encoded in your platform. So, yeah, I'm either going to abstain or vote yes on that thing. I don't really see it as like that big of a deal. You know, we're not operating it, like Maker Governance isn't sitting there like, what's it called? I don't think we're even participating in Velodrome's governance. I think it's really just like approve multi-sig, approve pool, manage DAI in pool, and then sit there, right? It's literally like the easiest version of any asset management you could possibly think of. You know, I think they wanted to do stable to stable pairs, which is like, that just seems to me like an investment in an ecosystem, and trying to see it go. It's just the difference is the investment is done protocol to protocol, which is like the key. You know, I think that's one of the most exciting things about where we're going directionally, I guess, is that we sort of start to see MakerDAO the protocol as like the customer, or MakerDAO the protocol as the actor, which is like, I think more interesting for a lot of different reasons. So this just seems like another small step in that direction. And I don't know, I can't really see like too many issues, although there is that recent action for American citizens is problematic. You know, this is a call for everybody, if you're an American, to think through what your entity structure is, whether you need to create a holdings corporation with like several other LLCs underneath it or other things like that. I mean, I'm not a fund, so I don't need to do that, but it's definitely smart to, you know, layer up, have an LLC, you know, be ready for whatever comes down the pipe so that you have a relatively sophisticated point of view of where things are going. You know, I think the more regulators engage with these protocols, the more they find that they're actually like the smart, hardworking people who want to make them happen. And then there's the other morons on the other side, which are scammers or like Terra, and like that's who they should go and talk to. And as far as I understand, in the conversations I've had with a couple of funds who talk to regulators and the other ones who sort of strolled in, that's where their direction is going. They want to go after things that are easy. You know, you saw this with like the Kim Kardashian suit in general. It's like they went after like obvious shilling of stuff, right? So,
yeah. And actually, I kind of that in the CFTC lawsuit too, that it wasn't about DAO governance in general. It was about UkiDAO making these very specific claims to customers that were, you know, not okay to make, because they said like, hey, if you participate, you'll be safe from regulation and you're gonna make a lot of money. And you know, yeah, it's just like, I mean, for me, I think that makes kind of sense, and that's a very sensible way to approach the whole thing. I just think that it's like regulation is so complicated to get right in a way, because like the last time I was in the UK, every train station I was in had these massive billboards for PayPal offering loans. And you can take out a loan of up to £1,000 very easily on PayPal if you have like a little bit of credit history there or transaction activity. And you have to pay back 24% of interest on that loan.
Jesus.
And for me, this is I mean, this is predatory, right? I mean, because like who is reading this billboard and saying like, oh yeah, getting a loan for 1,000 would really help me, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, predatory loan practices are not great. I mean, in the States, we have this payday loan thing, which you should go research, and it's awful. It's really terrible. Yeah, there's lots of rooms for improvement for financial services in many different ways. But yeah, making false claims, like anything, well, not just crypto, actually, now that I think about it, but like anything financial that says you will make a lot of money today, you should probably stop and pause before you click on any more buttons. Like that's pretty much the one thing I've learned is like, you will actually lose a lot of money today, but hopefully do something later. That's the only thing I know about finance. Like number go up over time. That's if you're lucky. Unless you want to talk about inflation and fiat money and how it's all a lie. We could talk about that too, but like whatever. And we don't need to go down that route. Let the Bitcoiner come out.
Hey, but
no, before.
Sorry, Frank.
No, I was going to say before this JokeDAO news broke, I hadn't even heard of this this DAO or what have you. But then I went on Twitter to try to find their Twitter handle, and I found Okie Trade. And when you look at their account, apparently it says that they are a financial services company, which is mind-boggling. Why in the world you would make that assumption and stuff. Let me see if I can share real quickly because I found it right here. So you can see here, you can see my screen. Hope I think you can, but it says right there, financial services. And this is Okie Trade. I guess it's part of JokeDAO, what have you. But anyway, I'm not going to make any comments on that. But it's kind of bananas, right?
Yeah, that's problematic. The way that whole thing shook down is not great either. But I mean, BZX is, as far as I understood, it was just basically like DYDX and then this DAO on top of it, and then it was very small, which is like relatively easy to send notice to people. And I think the worry with managing any assets or moving DAI around or doing anything is that like somehow, because of this action on this tiny DAO that was like clearly doing things that they shouldn't have been doing, is going to then get extrapolated out to our ecosystem. I think that's a long tail risk and fear, but I mean, it's existed the entire time. And so anyway, yeah, zooming back up, we were really just talking about the velodrome thing. I wish I had a really well-stated point of view on the thing. But like I said, I think it's relatively just like oh, hey, we're voting for this thing that we already voted for anyway. So like everyone be smart about what you're doing. Please don't tell folks we're going to make like 100% APY or whatever, because we're not. Like, so that would be smart. So, and I would imagine that's exactly what's going to happen. So
yeah, but Maker did that, no? Like we never had these kind of claims, right?
No. Yeah, mostly Maker is like probably the more risk averse, slow, thoughtful, methodical protocol, right? Inherently it's like I don't think we're really known for YOLO, as they would say, as the kids say.
Sometimes it gets too boring, but hey, that's actually good to be boring, right? But
yes, boring is good.
Boring is definitely good. Let's circle back to the end game, which I'm most excited about this month. So today we saw the first clustering proposal, and it has a very interesting name, Crimson, I believe it's called. Trying to find it real quick. Yeah, Crimson Creator Cluster, authored by Sam McPherson, as we said earlier. So it's aiming to become the core team of a creator MetaDAO, obviously pending MKR token owners' approval. Yeah, so this is exciting. What have you had a chance to review it, Raphael?
Yeah, I just read it like 5 minutes before our call started, actually. So not in depth, but I think so. I'm excited for Sam to be the facilitator, because I think like we met him in Warsaw, right? And I think he's super capable. I loved his thoughts about multi-chain DAI and DAI as this kind of super highway across chains. I think that's an amazing vision, and I hope he can pull that off with his Crimson DAO. And that's actually what I'm going to ask him, is like, how's your multi-chain strategy play into that? Because I see very little mention in the proposal, and I think that's kind of sad, because I think there was a really strong strategy, and also necessary. I think L2s are here to stay. Multi-chain is the future. I don't like anybody who's saying like when a person comes to me and says like only Ethereum in the future, only Bitcoin, you know, this totally disqualifies the dialogue. Like I don't have any interest in whatever they have to say after that, because that's so clearly not the case. And so I think Makers is well advised to find a solution to this multi-chain universe that we are going to live in, and maybe this can be the thing. What's exciting about this for me is it's the first manifestation of how a cluster actually announces itself, right? So they're kind of groundbreaking here, and that's exciting. I don't know, like, well, what do you guys think? Do you think he's the right person to
Well, yeah, it looks like it's proposing a lot of the D3M, right? So
yeah,
I think Sam is like you know, one of the first proponents of the D3M, right? And you know, I believe pretty sure he worked on the code and stuff. So, but you know, when it comes to the Crimson Creative Cluster proposal here, you know, as I look at it real quickly, yeah, a lot of it is featuring the D3M and using it for the benefit of the core, which is MakerDAO. So I have the utmost confidence that there's going to be some very interesting ideas there that are going to help the D3M scale Maker's presence, and not only the layer 1 ecosystem, but also layer 2, which I'm excited about. But any thoughts, Tim? I know you also haven't had much chance to look at it, but
I mean, it popped up an hour before this call, right? So it's, you know, I think.
But like with D3Ms, I mean, we scaled the other D3M, which is basically, I think, the only D3M we currently have. We scaled it down to 0, right? So that's the only like thing that kind of where I was pausing a bit, and I was like, why the focus on D3Ms? Is like we had this call, I think on GNR a while ago, a couple of months ago, where I think it was Robert and somebody else just, you know, was hammering home for an hour and a half how risky things are. So, you know.
Yeah. I mean, like the D3M, like the highest concept that I understand, and I can't wait to find out how naive this is like inject DAI, take token back. So you have, instead of only a liability, you have an asset as well, right? So the risk there is that it's basically either unbacked or also the token goes to 0. So, you know, I think the crux of the MetaDAO plan is actually to do exactly that, right? Each MetaDAO gets a D3M injection, and you take their balancer token as a result into whatever place you want to put it, right? Which is like part of the reason I was so enthusiastic in the first place. I was like, yes, turn teams into assets and liabilities. That is very smart, instead of only liabilities, which is a much better way to like run things in a more decentralized context. Plus it scales up and down, right? Like they're not working out or they're not going anywhere else. You just pull the thing out, turn it off, and like unravel the floodgates, right? But then if they all work out, then realistically they provide the revenues back. So in a nutshell, that's why I was sort of enthusiastic for Endgame. Over the summer, though, the narrative for me has sort of changed. It's been interesting. And then the RFC calls gave me like just so much different perspective that I think was super helpful. So I'm excited to see where these go. You know, I want to give a thorough read. I don't want to sort of like, you know, say things that might be incorrect about whatever Sam's plan is. But, you know, I think the protocol engineering team has always had sort of this work stream mindset. So this just seems like the next step for that. You know, I think Sam is an excellent candidate for a facilitator. you know, I don't know what red and orange flags are hiding, but as far as I can tell, these clustering things are sort of the logical evolution of like a core unit mandate, right? Like a rosy picture of the things they want to do, but this seems to have a lot more detail, which is like already a lot better in many ways. That might be the good segue to sort of talk about like incentive design. I still feel as though the incentive design for MetaDAOs is this open space. We really have to be thinking about mechanics of where they go. You know, Rune dropped the idea for airdrops, which personally I actually feel like if you do those in a way that's just more innovative, they're actually more powerful. But that aside, I think we really need to be thinking about incentives moving forward because they do kind of rule everything. And, you know, especially with like tokenomics and stuff, you have to be very, very careful to design them. And I'm kind of in the optimist camp of saying like, there is plenty of time to really think this stuff through. And to Rap's point of like research, I guess, like modeling it out and thinking through what the best incentive structures are so that of the MetaDAOs that do launch, most of them are set up for success. And then they just have to like put products out on the market and see what happens. So I'm hoping that that's where that goes. Because yeah, if you compare it to the current incentive model we have, it's no one's fault, but core units are basically incentivized to get the biggest budget that they possibly can, hang on to that as long as possible, hire a bunch of people, and then provide work of sorts. There's like no accountability frameworks or the ability to really see whether people are doing a good job or other people do a great job. And then the only thing they have to do is defend against the negative because they're not actually completing this feedback loop. That zooms back to like a point I made earlier about having this loop between maker holders, delegates, et cetera, and then the folks that are doing the work on the other side actually completing. We don't really have that right now. It's a little bit like kind of janky.
Yeah.
So
also, it's like
see how that goes.
You know, this soup of relationships and entanglements. And like I talked to some RWA people, and they were like, "Hey, we're talking to other RWA folks to form a protected DAO, and it's so great to just talk with like-minded people and flesh out ideas." And I was like, "Wow, this is exactly what should be happening, right?"
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we'll see which way those go. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I really want real world assets to be like, I think Frank was hammering down on this Ricardian contract point. Like, I think that's really the only real innovation that needs to happen. And it's like a substantial amount of like research and work to like actually make that happen. Plus you also have to like launch an implementation of this thing that is the smart contract is the contract, right? That is then enforceable in the real world. And we don't have that quite yet, right? That's an insanely hard problem to solve, but it has to be solved for real world assets to scale in any meaningful way so that you could have those PayPal banners put up by some robot inside of the London Railway, but you could offer 12% rates instead of 24 for people who want to take out unsecured loans. Maybe it'd be on Goldfinch, who knows? But lot of possibilities. I don't know, which way do we want to take that explosion of ideas to? Because that was a lot.
Yeah, but it's good stuff. It's definitely a great way to think about how these MetaDAOs are going to work. And I think, you know, the way I'm visualizing this is going to be each MetaDAO is going to have its own ecosystem. And in that ecosystem, they're going to, you know, build value, also look to automate stuff, right? Because that's super important, in my opinion, to automate a lot of this stuff. And yeah, and along from each MetaDAO, I can see, you know, active ecosystem actors, ecosystem actors, as they like to call them, getting involved in building not only the front ends, but maybe helping write the code for automation, or if you're in marketing, right, you're a marketing company and you help out our creator MetaDAO do some marketing down in South America or in wherever in Asia. So the whole thing of a MetaDAO, each MetaDAO having an ecosystem is going to be super dope, in my opinion. I'm excited to see how it's going to work. I think that in the real world, it's already happening sort of with other centralized companies, but in this decentralized organization atmosphere, ecosystem is going to be, it's going to be interesting to see. And, you know, I'm already thinking of a bunch of companies and individuals that could be ecosystem actors, and how each MetaDAO is going to need them to kind of build it out, right? So it's going to be fun stuff. So let's move on to the other subject of this week, which is you know, we have a lot of the real world assets, and that has to do with the PSM, with the USDC PSM, a lot of proposals. I think last night I saw one by a protocol by the name of Origin, which I actually looked into in 2018. They have this marketplace where you can buy, sort of like eBay, where you can buy things, you know, swag, whatever, furniture, what have you, just like eBay. And they created this dollar called the OUSD, which is the Origin US dollar. And I don't know if you guys saw the proposal last night, but they actually have jumped into the pool of everyone who wants to get a piece of the action, so to speak, of the USDC PSM. And they're making a proposal. I kind of just glanced to it, but my first reaction was like, oh, wow, Origin has survived all this, all these ups and downs of the market, and they're still alive. And so that's awesome to see. So any thoughts with regards to the other ones? I know there's the CoinShare, there's obviously the Coinbase Rewards. Who else am I forgetting? There's somebody else, but anyway.
There's CoinShares,
Gemini.
Coinbase Rewards. There's the Gemini one. Then there's other stuff. I mean, I'll sort of blanket statement and then zoom in. So like with PSMs, I think where we are right now is that we are sort of getting our way out of the mire we put ourselves in, which was plugging in this module without a real cap or any guardrails, right? So the problem with the PSM realistically is that we want a tight peg because consumers, relatively speaking, aren't really ready for a floating dollar. The funny thing is that behind all the scenes, there's in regular dollar markets around the world, there are Forex markets that makes the peg spreads tight, right? So this is just sort of the decentralized version of that whole thing. PSMs are sort of an integral problem or an integral problem to solve. Our biggest issue is that we didn't think through like, okay, well, what happens if too much capital floods in? So it's actually like counterintuitively kind of an okay problem to have too much capital on the books. But at the same point, it makes us sacrifice a lot of values that we hadn't really considered wrestling with, right? You know, this is where my personal opinion from zooming in comes in, which is that I really, I think I posted this when Shippy was asking about turning fees on. I was like, no, you need like 6 things at once. Let's do like these 6 things. And then if they don't work, turn a few of them on and off, right? That's the problem, is that there's no guardrails, right? Realistically, it should be like crypto vaults is X number, the things, you know, the things that make us money so we can all be here. Like, and then against that, there is like the need for the peg in a 40% downturn. And then against that, there's like the continuation of that waterfall, which is like some flexible capital. And then at the bottom of that, there is like the part of it that you could say we could inject somewhere else, right? Like push it out of the PSM, flash loan it into something and use DAI as the rails. So with that said, I wish we had that in place because I think that framework would give us a better idea of handling things. On top of that, I think we could automate it, right? Because it'd be kind of nice if it was just sort of, here's the capital we have outstanding on like the loan book, like here's what we need in a 40% downturn, right? Anything above that, people pay fees to put it in there, right? For the tin. So I put USDC in, mint DAI out. And then tout is always at 0 because why would you do that to people? And we just like think thoughtfully about how to manage the thing. We just didn't put that in place, which is why we're in this spot right now where like other companies are coming in to like try and take that capital and move it because who doesn't want assets under management, right? So in that framing, I think I'm not sure if these proposals are too early. Haven't quite made up my mind particularly yet. But I will say the best part about them is that they've all been really high quality and thoughtful, which is kind of awesome. But, you know, in the end of the day, the PSM is what backs DAI, right? It's 80% backed up by this thing. So we're now we're removing that backing. So we have to be very cognizant of that fact. You know, I think treating it like capital that we can just invest is like not the right framing in my mind. It's much more in that other one that I talked about. This is the waterfall and this is where it can go. I wish we had that. So that's sort of where I think of it. With that being said, the thing I like the most is obviously the Gemini one, where we just have to tweak parameters and then they're building on top of it and creating markets that people compete in, right? That's incentive design. That's mostly decentralized. That's like trying to go towards software. That's the thing I like. I do enjoy the Coinbase one because it sort of makes them have to compete with everyone else. And it also makes Coinbase compete with its own company Circle. Although they're not their own, but they're like connected via entity structures and people who are like dual listed on boards and stuff. It's definitely kind of an interesting space to find ourselves. But yeah, I mean, I don't think that we should be YOLO dropping like hundreds of millions of dollars or billions here and there. I think we should probably be starting slow. And I kind of wish that we were doing that a little bit more. That also segues into same thing for real world assets. I really wish people would stop asking for $500 million and be like, we want to do 5 million for 3 months. We're going to create an LLC wrapper and then we're going to liquidate it just to test all of our systems. You know, I was talking to Khan, I think from Centrifuge. I'm just like, listen, I like the token thing, but could you just like make a thing and liquidate it so we know the rails work? Like, could we deal with that, figure out what happens on the whole thing? And I think it blew his mind. I think it blew both of our minds. It's like, yeah, we should do that. I'd love to see more of that kind of like thinking, right? Adversarial environments, which is what crypto was built for, is actually about executing in an environment of adversaries, not being a bunch of jerks on a forum. That's different. That's not what that means. It's about protecting your secrets when there are like governments trying to steal it, or like actors from this other place that are double agents. Like that's actually what like the roots of this space are about. So I just kind of want to steer us back towards that a little bit, because it's like there's really amazing innovations that are still happening in that type of environment. So yeah, Gemini 1 is cool. Coinbase 1 is good. We can do better. That's the summary.
That's a great way to summarize things there from your point of view. What about Raphael? What about Flipside Crypto? Any thoughts on any of these proposals yet?
So yeah, I think Coinbase is interesting. I love that they kind of give us yield on basically the assets we already hold. What I'm a little worried about, and I think Seth from Strategic Finance just summed it up recently in a reply to me on the thread, is that if we ever need to get these assets out, it's going to be 2 weeks to 2 months, depending on how the process is at that moment. And that's, in crypto, that's a very long time. Like, for what reason, like for instance, and especially at the moment, because we've seen that Curve, we think like is saying, hey, maybe we should exclude DAI from the free pool. And, you know, so this meme that DAI is not pegged to the dollar has somehow been started, right? And if people all of a sudden say like, hey, actually, I prefer to have my USDC back that I switched for DAI, and Maker needs 2 months to pay them back, we're in a world of pain, right? Like, I'm not saying this is going to happen. Obviously, we have more than the 1.6 billion, so we have like there's a considerable buffer, right? But there's this. There's also like the whole thing is also a psychological game, right? And then in the perception of people who watch the space, all of a sudden they know that a certain part of DAI is not liquid, right? It's not backed by liquid collateral anymore. When 1.6 billion is in the USDC vault at Coinbase Prime. So that's my concern here. Other than that, what I love about it is it's very quick, there's yield, and there's no reason whatsoever to stay in there forever, right? It's like we can do it, and then in a month or 3 months or 4 months, whenever there's a better solution, we just take it back out again. I love the Gemini one. I think that's amazing. Exactly the way that should have been done. I mean, the only concern is that like GUSD has like 300 M market cap total, right? So how would that work if Maker says like, okay, cool, let's swap $1 billion? I don't know.
I think the GUSD one is different in the sense that it's more about letting market makers fill the incentives in, and then, you know, if we fill the debt ceiling, then we can expand it. I believe that GUSD is very similar to the way USDC works. It's basically like the Gemini version of USDC.
Yeah.
So it's very easy for them to mint it. I'm not sure if they earn treasury spreads or how that goes. You know, Circle's been around longer, so they've been producing public documents. You know, where the whole thing goes, I don't really know. But again, one thing I didn't mention is that it's really promising that Coinbase is launching a new product and has thought of a protocol to like be the first customer. Like, I think we've kind of lost that along the way, which is like amazing. Like for DeFi, DeFi is like what, like 7 years old max. It's kind of amazing to see. But yeah, like I said, I just really would prefer that it's more tending towards automation, less towards these services. I think Was it a governance and risk call? Was it Mooney? Probably Mooney. Someone brought up that, block rewards would be better and trying to keep it as liquid as possible, to your point, Raph. I think that would be cool. Less humans as control, more software as control, stuff you could monitor, like an API endpoint is way better than like some dude who lives in the Caymans with a multi-sig. Yeah, those are my thoughts there. Yeah, I don't really feel the urgency to be earning 1.2%, especially when you just go to your what's it called, interactive brokers account and realize that the rates right now are like 9.8. You're like, you want to maybe change that a little bit? So
yeah, exactly.
But whatever.
But
we're just like riffing right now, so there's like really no action to come from this in general. Like, it all comes down to the vote, and we'll see where it goes. But yeah, it's nuanced, basically.
Well, hopefully we'll eventually one day get some earnings out of that PSM, because there's a ton of cash sitting there that's not earning anything, right? So
yeah, see, again, it's only not earning anything because we didn't tweak the incentives to think through what it would look like if there was this influx. If we had been earning fees from it, at least we would have gotten some fees and been like, well, it's really there as a buffer, right?
Yeah.
Which would be nice. But we'd just be in a different frame of mind. And I think that's kind of what we've lost along the way. I mean, you can go to the Discord to see different takes on that whole thing. I think there's been a lot of passionate arguments, but again, like, you have to believe in like the first principles of like free speech, free markets, free labor, right? If we're not doing those things for people, then like, what are we doing? And the PSM in its current form, which didn't think through like the free markets part of it, right? Like, I get the Steelman opinion, which is that arbing it via vaults, the peg pricing is hard. I get that, but flash loans exist. And like, I wrote State of the Pegs for 75 weeks, and every 5 weeks there was someone like flash loaning against everything to take away like, $100,000, $200,000 profit each time, right? On top of all the fees that they had to do. So like, the infrastructure exists to make that stuff happen. We should be incentivizing markets. That's kind of where it goes, not partnerships, not as much. If we go back all the way to the white paper, it's like, we are still soft pegged, right? It's just the spread is so tight that it's like, we kind of forget it, right? And like I said, even earlier, even dollar markets have pegs and pricing behind them, right? It's kind of a marketing narrative at that point. So whatever.
So I guess the key word here is automation, right? We just need more stuff automated. And I think I saw Chris Mooney yesterday on Twitter, and even Brian McMichaels, shout out to them, talking about automation and how we kind of lost that.
Yeah, we lost it.
Yeah, it's an autonomous organization, right? And when I think about autonomous, I think about an autonomous driving vehicle that drives itself. So yeah, that's definitely the key. But
that's what I'm talking about with that frame of mind. It's just like the PSM, we could go in that direction. We could reject every single proposal and be like, actually, you know what? We want to create free markets. We like the GUSD thing. Here's how you do it better. And then we could set up these instant access modules. So it's like, okay, if number of crypto loans is X, like, turn fees off. If number of liquidations is Y, turn fees off. If liquidations pass, turn fees on, right? And it just needs to be this like very simple algorithm. Like, even in a way that like we manage risk as well, it's like, if you think more like capital allocator fund mindset, most of the time they have like this big, huge algorithm or set of them, normally a set of them, a lot of them, that are all interacting, and that's kind of how they go towards it, right? We have to be thinking more in that mindset. Otherwise, it's not gonna scale. It's like, oh, we'll just do a multi-sig and automate later. It's like, okay, well then what happens if someone gets hurt or sick or has problems, or they drop their ledger in the toilet or something, I mean, I don't know how that would happen, but like, there's all sorts of things that seem simple that would just like totally break the whole model. So we just need to get back towards that. It is in the white paper too. It's just, meant to be more automated over time. So maybe there'll be a MetaDAO that's just like robot DAO, and that's all they pitch.
There you go. There you go. That'd be a hell of a ecosystem there. But ledgers are hopefully waterproof, so we'll be okay there too. But look, we'll end it here. I think we spent we could keep going. I think I can tell, but. We're going to end this recording here. It was great having you fill in for the other Tim. 2 Tims and a Frank and a Raph joining us today. This has been super exciting to have you, Tim Black. I hope you can come back. I'm sure you have a ton of ideas that this DAO can use to improve. And hopefully we'll get you back on soon with the other Tim. So then it will be two Tims of Frank and Raph.
Let's do it. Sounds great.
Thanks for having us.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, Tim. Thanks for being here. Great talk.